Having conquered financial markets, we move to business finance. Following the learning from headlines approach, let's examine a survey by Financial Times. We'll dig into the article in a moment. First, look at the income statement, balance sheet model, and the flow diagram, two color-coded diagrams that will become dear to your heart because you'll refer to them throughout Part 2 of the course to keep track of the taxonomy of business finance. Print the 2 pages in color, put them back to back in a transparent plastic sleeve, and keep it handy. Or save them on your desktop for quick reference, or both. You already know the basics from your core course in finance, but they need refreshing and extending to set you up to excel in the finance electives you will take soon. The right side of the ISBS model lists working capital in gray, capital budgeting in green, financing in red, valuation in blue. The first 3 points are the areas where managers make policy. The fourth one is the culmination of financial policy, bringing together the results of working capital policy, capital budgeting policy, and financing policy as reflected in the value of the business. The left side of the flow diagram lists historical ratios in gray, KWAC in blue, capital budgeting in green, forecast and EFN, external financing needed, in gray and red, equity valuation in blue, financing in red. There are 6 points and 5 elements in the diagram. Each element represents an Excel spreadsheet model. You will learn to use each model and to understand the strengths and weaknesses. It'll take you only a few minutes to read the Financial Times Capital Spending Survey. Its brevity misrepresents its importance. In those few paragraphs, Adam Sampson mentions all of the policy areas referred to in the ISBS model and flow diagram. He tells you that fund managers, investors holding company stock, are pushing for more capital spending because more fixed assets on the balance sheet leads to growth in production and revenue. But he also tells you that company managers use stock buybacks and dividends to drive equity prices up. They, he says, are reluctant to direct cash flow toward large investments. Sampson, although he probably did not intend to do so because he's merely reporting the results of a survey, sets up the friction between putting money into new plant equipment and working capital versus putting money into buying back the company's own stock and or paying dividends. Part 2 of the course will ask you to decide if maximization of stock price is the appropriate goal of the business. If it isn't the appropriate goal, what is? According to Michael Porter, perhaps the most famous business school professor alive today, the goal should be maximization of rate of return. He believes that by maximizing rate of return, stock price will take care of itself. You will learn how business managers establish financial policy, how they decide whether or not to invest in growth by adding new assets, and how they decide whether or not to buy back shares and pay dividends.